Welcome to the training series following the nutrition guidelines for student nutrition programs. This series is designed to help you follow the Provincial Student Nutrition Program Nutrition Guidelines of 2020. The training series has been developed by Toronto Public Health for student nutrition programs operating within the City of Toronto. The information in the training series is intended to guide student nutrition program volunteers and coordinators, as well as staff or administrators at schools or community agencies who are involved in the planning, ordering, or operating of student nutrition programs. This training module is about whole grain foods and is Module 3 of a 4-module series. Toronto Public Health is not responsible for any misinterpretation or misuse of this presentation. The information in this presentation reflects what is known at the time of release only. This is the third of 4 modules in a series of training videos on following the nutrition guidelines for student nutrition programs. In order to receive a certificate recognizing that you completed the full training, you must complete all 4 training videos and complete a knowledge quiz. You may find it useful to have a copy of the Nutrition Guidelines Summary for Student Nutrition Programs with you to help you follow along. You can access the Nutrition Guidelines, sample menus, and knowledge quiz by going to www.toronto.ca/student-nutrition-program/ then click on Training and Resources. Please ensure that you have also completed the food safety training available on the same webpage. The key topics that will be covered in this module are a quick recap of the nutrition guidelines, meals and snacks and finding information on packages, whole grain foods, whole grains on the serve list, label reading, identifying if grain products meet nutrition guidelines, and whole grains on the do not serve list. As outlined in Module 1, the Student Nutrition Program Nutrition Guidelines are used to create simple, nutritious menus for meals and snacks. A meal at a student nutrition program is considered a breakfast, morning meal, or lunch that offers 3 food categories: 1 vegetable or fruit, plus 1 protein food, plus 1 whole grain food. A snack at a student nutrition program offers 2 food categories: 1 vegetable or fruit, plus 1 protein food, or 1 whole grain food. You will notice that for each food category, the amount of food or serving size is not suggested. When it comes to serving food at your student nutrition program, it is important to trust that children and youth know how much they need to eat to best satisfy their appetite. All children and youth should be encouraged to pay attention to these natural hunger and fullness cues. In order to easily select packaged foods to include in your student nutrition program menu, it is important to understand how to read the nutrition label included in the food packaging. There are 3 areas to find important nutrition information. The front of the package can give you some important information, such as % milk fat in dairy products, or indicate if a product is a good source of a specific nutrient, such as fiber. But beware, it can also mislead you. So it is very important to look at the ingredient list and nutrition facts table to get the full picture. The ingredient list is very important. The ingredients are listed in descending order by weight. The first ingredient is in the food in greatest amount. Manufacturers change the ingredients in their food products over the years. So it's important to check the ingredient list often to be sure that it still meets the nutrition guidelines. We then have the nutrition facts table. Information in the nutrition facts table is based on a quantity called serving size. The serving size tells you the amount of food used to calculate the numbers in the nutrition facts table. The serving size is at the top of the table. The main nutrients to look for while choosing foods for your student nutrition program are sugar and sodium content. You want to be sure that the amounts meet the requirements for each food category. We will go into further detail in future slides. It is also important to look at fiber content, depending on the food you are considering. The percent daily value shows how much or how little of a nutrient is in a food or beverage. 5% daily value or less means there is a little of a nutrient, and 15% daily value or more means there is a lot of a nutrient in the food or beverage. Fresh produce and items made in-house, such as fresh-made breads and bakery items, do not need to have a nutrition facts table. The last page of the handout, Nutrition Guideline Summary for Student Nutrition Programs, gives you specific information on what to look for on a food package. We will now look at the whole grain foods category, then choose food products that meet the nutrition guidelines by reading the labels. The types of foods found in the whole grain foods category emphasize the quality of the grain. Let us review the parts of a whole grain in order to understand why the nutrition guidelines ask that all grains served in student nutrition programs are whole grain. A whole grain has 3 layers: bran, endosperm, and germ. Each layer contains different nutrients. The refined grain has the bran and germ layers removed. The health benefits are clear. Whole grain foods provide more nutrients, including fiber, and less risk of disease, such as heart disease, colon cancer, type 2 diabetes, and stroke. The whole grain foods category is on the second page of the Nutrition Guideline Summary for Student Nutrition Programs. There are 3 key messages to remember when selecting whole grains to serve at your student nutrition program. Number 1, choose products that have whole grain, whole wheat, or bran listed as the first ingredient on the label. Number 2, products should have less than or equal to 10% daily value of sodium per serving. Number 3, products should have less than or equal to 8 grams of sugar per 30 grams of serving. Most whole grains have a package with a label. It is very important to check the ingredients list and nutrition facts table that are printed on the label to find out this information. Later in this module, we will go through some label reading examples together so that you can apply label reading skills when choosing products for your student nutrition program. This slide lists some examples of whole grain foods on the serve list for student nutrition programs. Please refer to the Nutrition Guideline Summary for Student Nutrition Programs for a more complete list. Examples of whole grain bread products include whole grain breads, English muffins, and pitas. Examples of whole grain, grain-based snacks, baked goods, cereals, and other grains include whole grain crackers, whole grain cereals, whole grain muffins, and quinoa, oats, and brown rice. Sometimes the word multigrain is written on a food package. The word multigrain means that there are a variety of flours used to make the product. You will need to look at the ingredient list to determine exactly what those grains are, if they are whole grain, and also if they appear as the first item in the ingredient list. To help identify if a grain food product meets the Student Nutrition Program nutrition guidelines, we can ask these 3 questions. Looking at the ingredient list, is whole grain, whole wheat, or bran the first ingredient? Looking at the nutrition facts table, is the sugar less than or equal to 8 grams of sugar per 30 grams of serving? And is the percent daily value for sodium less than or equal to 10%? We will now do some label reading examples together for whole grain foods. Let's look at examples of how to choose whole grain foods by reading food labels. To find out what is really in this product, start by looking at the ingredients. What is the first ingredient? It is enriched wheat flour. This is not the same as a whole grain. It will not provide the same benefits as a whole grain does that still has its 3 layers, bran, endosperm, and germ, intact. There are some whole grains in the ingredient list that have been added, but they are not the first ingredient, which means that the quantity of the whole grain is much lower than the enriched wheat flour. Therefore, this bread does not meet the nutrition guidelines. We don't need to go further to look at the nutrition facts table. Enriched grains have gone through a refining process that removes the germ and the bran, but has nutrients added back. Although many of the vitamins lost in the refining process can be added back, the lost fiber is not replaced. For multigrain products, this means that many kinds of grains are in the product, but these grains may or may not be whole grains. What about this cereal? Take a moment to identify if this cereal meets the nutrition guidelines. So we can ask ourselves those 3 questions mentioned earlier. Number 1, is whole grain, whole wheat, or bran the first ingredient? Yes. Is the percent daily value for sodium less than or equal to 10%? Yes. Is the sugar less than or equal to 8 grams of sugar per 30 grams of serving? It is hard to tell at a glance by looking at the label. In this cereal, the nutrients are listed for a 55-gram serving, but the nutrition requirement is for 8 grams of sugar in a 30-gram serving. On the next slide, you will learn a simple math calculation to help determine whether this cereal meets the nutrition guidelines for the sugar level requirement. Remember that the nutrition facts table shows that there are 10 grams of sugar in 55 grams of cereal. Let's do a rough calculation. There are 10 grams of sugar in 55 grams of cereal. How much sugar would be in 30 grams of cereal? We can round up the serving size to 60 grams to make the calculation easier to do in our heads. So roughly, we have 10 grams of sugar per 60 grams of cereal. If we divide these numbers by 2, then we have roughly 5 grams of sugar per 30 grams serving of cereal. Would this meet the Student Nutrition Program guidelines? Remember, the requirement for whole grain foods is for the sugar amount to be less than or equal to 8 grams of sugar per 30 grams of serving. So yes, this cereal meets the nutrition guidelines. Here we have 2 different packages of crackers. Let's examine the packages to see which one will meet the nutrition guideline. For package 1 on the left, is whole grain, whole wheat, or bran the first ingredient? No. Wheat flour is the first ingredient, which is not a whole grain. this cracker would not meet the nutrition guidelines. There is no need to look at the package any further. For package 2 on the right, is whole grain, whole wheat, or bran the first ingredient? Yes, it is. Is the percent daily value for sodium less than or equal to 10%? Yes, it is. Is the sugar less than or equal to 8 grams of sugar per 30 grams of serving? The answer is also yes. Package 2 meets the Student Nutrition Program nutrition guidelines. Sugar isn't usually a concern in crackers, and as we can see here, there is no sugar. So what about this granola bar? Take a minute to identify if this food meets the nutrition guidelines. Alright, so is whole grain, whole wheat, or bran the first ingredient? Yes, it is. Is the sugar less than or equal to 8 grams of sugar per 30 grams of serving? Also yes. Is the percent daily value for sodium less than or equal to 10%? Yes, it is. But this is actually a do not serve item. This is due to the presence of chocolate chips. As soon as any kind of baked good has added chocolate, chocolate chips, marshmallows, yogurt dips, etc., they become a do not serve item. And that brings us to the other do not serve items within the whole grain foods category. This slide shows some grain-based food products which are do not serve items. More examples are listed in the nutrition guidelines. Any item with chocolate, candy, marshmallow, or yogurt dip or pieces. Cakes, donuts, pies, squares, and cookies. And toaster pastries, and croissants. This module covered the following topics: a quick recap of the nutrition guidelines, meals and snacks and finding information on packages, whole grain foods, whole grains on the serve list, label reading, identifying if grain products meet nutrition guidelines, and whole grains on the do not serve list. This concludes training Module 3 on whole grain foods. You can access Module 4, Assessing Menus, by going to www.toronto.ca/student-nutrition-program/ then clicking on Training and Resources. You can also visit the City of Toronto's website, which is updated regularly with health advice and information. For more information on nutrition in student nutrition programs, go to www.toronto.ca/student-nutrition-program/, then click on Training and Resources. You will find information such as the new guidelines, sample menus, COVID-19, food safety, and nutrition resources, and training videos. You can get answers to specific nutrition questions by emailing snp@toronto.ca. For food safety questions, email dinesafe@toronto.ca or call 416-338-7600 or 311.